Good morning. I want to welcome you all to this morning's audio webinar. This is Danny Grossman. I'm the CEO of the Jewish Community Federation and Endowment Fund, and we're really appreciative of all of those of you who have joined. So a sense of the flow, we're going to set some introductory contextualizing remarks. Then my colleague from the East Bay, Jim Brandt, will speak briefly, and Roxanne will introduce our four speakers today, and they'll roll until we have some questions at the end. So first of all, the purpose is to update you. You are our leaders, our donors, our local partners, local and national partners, and we want you to know what's happening as much as we know about what's going on with the North Bay fires. We are deeply moved by the response, by the healing response of all of our partners up there, the agencies, the synagogues, the rabbis, and we know that because our team has been on the ground since the beginning of this crisis in order to support in any way that we can, to mobilize, focus, align resources. And we're really so blessed to work with a wonderful network of partners up there that we've been working with for years. As many of you may know, the Jewish Community Federation Endowment Fund, which serves San Francisco, the Peninsula, Marin, and Sonoma counties, and the Jewish Federation of the East Bay, which also serves Napa County, have created the North Bay Wildfire Emergency Fund to provide an easy way for members of our community to support short and long-term recoveries. We're aiming to be as transparent as possible about for what and how those funds are used, and 100% of those funds will be deployed in the affected area, largely but not solely for and to support the Jewish community. So first, a few facts about what's going on up there. As we know them, and as you all know, it changes hourly, but as we know them, there remain more than 10,000 residents still under evacuation who have not been able to return from their homes, but fortunately that's down from 100,000. The death toll currently stands at 42, although unfortunately still many people missing, and at least 2 of those who have perished are from the Jewish community. Sonoma County, as I think you all know, bore the brunt of the devastation as 4 of the many fires tore through 80,000 acres, destroying an estimated 7,000 homes across both Napa and Sonoma counties, including at least 50 primary homes of Jewish community members, other secondary homes, and unfortunately significant destruction to Camp Newman in Santa Rosa. In addition to the leaders you're about to hear from, I do want to acknowledge a number of people up there who have been extraordinary in their tireless and selfless efforts on behalf of the community. Rabbi George Gittleman of Congregation Shomrei Torah, Rabbi Mordechai Miller of Congregation Beth Ami, Rebbe Erwin Keller of Congregation Ner Shalom, Rabbi Steve Finley of Congregation Shir Shalom, Rabbi Ted Feldman of B'nai Israel Jewish Center, Rabbi Mendel Ovotsky of Chabad of Sonoma, Rabbi David Bush of Chabad of Petaluma, Ellen Bluestein, Executive Director of the JCC of Sonoma County. Really extraordinary, and they deserve our praise and support. My colleague Jim Brandt may add a couple of names from the Napa side as well. Additionally, we have 2 professionals who live up there who suffered their own issues with evacuation, Aiko Sophie Morissette-Izaki and Carol Appel, but who continued to work throughout the crisis, and we're deeply appreciative to them. So before turning over to our speakers, I do want to introduce my close colleague, Rabbi Jim Brandt, the CEO of the Jewish Community Federation of the East Bay. We appreciate all that his team is doing and feel fortunate to work in partnership with you. Jim?
Thank you, Danny. Thank you so much for everything that you and the San Francisco Federation are doing. Just wanted to, we have been also in touch closely with our colleagues in Napa, both from Napa Chabad and from Congregation Beth Shalom. As Danny said, the home devastation and the impact on the Jewish community as far as Jewish residents is much greater in Sonoma and Napa. In Napa itself, there are about 700 structures destroyed. Speaking with the rabbis up there who have both been doing a great service, and Rabbi Niles Goldstein has been serving his congregants who have lost homes. There are only so far of the affiliated Jewish community, only two primary homes destroyed, but that number could actually go up as some people are still away from the area. Just to put a little color on Danny's comments about the devastation at Camp Newman, I think many of us know that about 90% of the camp was destroyed in the fires. Miraculously, a small shed that held the prayer books and the talitot miraculously survived, which was kind of a sign of hope and resilience. The camp, of course, will have a long-term plan for rebuilding. Right now, their short-term needs are basically to have funding to enable them to continue their business. They're a year-round retreat site, and they're losing all of their winter business. They're looking to and have a commitment to run camp this summer, and they're looking for alternate sites, and they'll need some help with that rental, as well as scholarships, camperships for families that were affected by the fire who are part of the camp community. There are 6 employees who live at camp. All 6 live there with their families, and those 6 families lost their homes in the fire. And Camp Newman is keeping them for now on staff and is looking to provide them as much of a benefit as possible and to help them during this difficult time for their personal family loss. As well, there are 20 year-round Jewish communal service workers who work at the camp full-time that they're looking to find ongoing employment and sustenance for. So this is a short-term piece, and obviously there's going to be a lot more information as it comes, but that just gives you a little bit of a snapshot into Camp Newman and a little bit of Napa.
Thank you so much, Jim and Danny both. This is Roxanne Cohen. I'm a senior program officer at the Jewish Community Federation and Endowment Fund. We're really thrilled to have you all with us today on this call. I'm going to introduce our 4 speakers, and following that, turn to them each for some opening comments, and then we're going to allow for some Q&A. We have a couple of questions, but we'd also like for you who are on the call to submit some questions too. If you'd like to send in a question, you can do so through the Zoom application if you're online, or by email to Nora, N-O-R-A-S, @sfjcf.org. So let me start by introducing Rabbi Stephanie Kramer, who's the Associate Rabbi at Congregation Shomrei Torah in Santa Rosa. From the moment of the first Sonoma County evacuations, Rabbi Kramer has provided safe space to her congregants and to the broader community, while also caring for her own immediate family, including 2 small children. The day camp that she opened at her congregation has welcomed up to, and actually I think as of yesterday, over 100 children each day and their families, providing support, programming, hot lunch, and just love and care. Our second speaker will be Yotam Polizer, who's the co-CEO of IsraAID, an Israeli-based nonprofit, non-governmental organization committed to providing life-saving disaster relief and long-term post-trauma support in the face of disasters and crises around the world. IsraAID opened its first global office in Silicon Valley earlier this year, and Yotam was coincidentally here in the area on his way to join IsraAID's emergency earthquake response team in Mexico when the fires broke out, and he jumped into action immediately to help here in Sonoma County. Nancy Masters is the Associate Executive Director at Jewish Family and Children's Services, which is one of the oldest and largest human service agencies in the United States. During crises, JFCS serves as a lifeline for people of all faiths and backgrounds from 5 Bay Area regions. And Nancy has been with the organization for over 10 years in a variety of roles. Before I continue, I just want to ask anyone who's on the call, including our speakers, if you could just mute until we call on you. Thank you. Our final speaker is Lieutenant Colonel Chris Angel. He's a local resident of the community and a congregant at Congregation Shomrei Torah. He's a commander of the 579th Engineer Battalion, headquartered in Santa Rosa. He is also currently serving as the commander of the Joint Task Force 579's Wildfire Support Mission, augmenting California's civilian emergency response efforts. So for opening comments, in the order of introductions with Rabbi Kramer first, I hope you can each please share an overview of what you've been seeing and experiencing on the ground over these past 2 weeks. We'd love to hear both about your personal and professional experiences, including how you and your organization have responded to support the community. Rabbi Kramer.
Thank you so much, and thank you all so much for caring enough to be on this phone call today. My story really started, I'll start with the personal and I'll bleed over into the professional. So my story started being home, safe and sound, sleeping, and having prepared for a fundraising dinner that was going to happen in my personal sukkah in my backyard on Monday night. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, being woken up by loud winds. And I thought the sukkah was just going to blow through a window. So I got up, I went into the backyard to see if I needed to take down the sach on the top of the sukkah. And I realized that I couldn't see the sukkah. The smoke was so thick that I couldn't see anything in the backyard. I quickly realized that it was smoke. I went inside and tried to turn on my lights to get my family up, and there were no lights. So I was stuck using the flashlight on my cell phone, waking up my 2 young children, my husband, my mother, and my mother-in-law, who were all in town for the Chagim, and evacuating our family. From there, hopping onto social media, getting the congregation open because there were mass evacuations happening and people had nowhere to go. And the whole next 48 hours, probably even longer, spent merely trying to make sure that congregants who had been taken through evacuations into shelters knew that Shomrei Torah was open and that they could come there. Immediately, the Federation reached out, put me in touch also with Yotam from IsraAID, who you'll hear from in just a minute. And as soon as possible, we were all meeting at Congregation Shomrei Torah, Federation, and IsraAID, both in the trenches, figuring out how we could best serve the Jewish community and the broader community as well. So we had Shomrei Torah opened up within an hour of the fire started as an evacuation point and continued to let it be open throughout night as a safe place. And if you haven't followed as closely, there were waves of evacuations and different parts of the city were allowed back in only to evacuate again. So my family has actually evacuated our home twice. Thankfully, we're back in our home, and that's the same for Rabbi George Gittleman. There is nothing scarier than being woken up in the middle of the night, not having enough media to know exactly where the fires are or to know where is safe to go. It's just petrifying. It's an experience none of us should ever experience. But the Jewish Federation and IsraAID were really in the trenches, as well as Stacy from Road of Shalom, Rabbi Stacy Friedman, who helped us to see what the needs were and what we could help provide. So immediately we knew that the schools were going to be closed. We thought it was only going to be for a couple of days. Little did we know that we're going on 3 weeks of multiple school districts all being closed. And so Congregation Shomrei Torah decided, with the help, we could have never done it alone, from Federation and IsraAID, opening up a day camp. And the first days we got 60, 80 kids. We're now up to over 120 kids. We've had different Jewish organizations, all the different JCCs have sent teams from different congregations have come and provided food. Today, right now, in the sanctuary, they're pickling cucumbers, they're making Play-Doh, they're braiding challah dough. I think Octo Pretzel is going to be here later. Yesterday, we had a different concert and band, but we're really trying to keep kids safe inside. The weather outside is terrible. The smoke is horrible. I know y'all have been feeling it in spurts throughout the entire Bay Area. And we've also had tons of therapists here. The kids, even if they have a home to go back to now, which some of them do and some of them do not, they're petrified. Being evacuated was jarring. Their parents were jarred. Everyone was jarred. And so it really has taken a toll. So we're trying to set up therapists. Our congregation has sent out mass emails. We've also called everyone. We've had help from different Jewish organizations in the Bay Area helping to make these calls. Every congregant they get on the phone call want to tell their story because it's cathartic. And now I'm so proud of my congregants because they realize that this place is a place that so many are in need. Most of them have insurance. They'll be able to rebuild, but they're looking for long-term rentals. It's going to take 2 to 3 years to rebuild any of these homes because of the scale of destruction. And so many now have lost their work because their places of business have been destroyed. All of Quayside was destroyed. That was hundreds of jobs, golf courses, restaurants, lots of different things. And so we're worried not just about the immediate need of housing, which I've tried to help all of our congregants and the broader community do. We're doing gift cards, reaching out to public schools, but we're also trying to focus on the long-term goals, not just the short-term goals.
Thank you, Rabbi Kramer, and I appreciate that you got us into really helping to understand the pressing needs and concerns. Yotam, we'd love to turn to you next and ask for your response to the same question.
So good morning, everyone. It's really an honor to join all of you this morning. First and foremost, I would like to really acknowledge that both the incredible contribution of the Federation, Jewish Family and Children's Services, and above everyone, the leadership that the local leaders such as Rabbi Kramer, Rabbi George, and all the other rabbis from the area have shown this area. It's been an inspiration to all of us. And I've been there from the very first day with Rabbi Stephanie working together, and we're really, really proud of this partnership. I think I think Stephanie related to the immediate needs and also gave a very good overview of the story of what happened so far. So I would like to share with you a little bit about what we're doing and focus mostly on what we identify as the long-term need. And this sort of needs assessment is based not only about what we've seen in the last 10 days, but also on our experience from similar disasters. We currently have teams in Houston responded to the flooding, in Puerto Rico, in Mexico, and in other places. And as you heard, I was actually on my way to join our team in Mexico, and I did a U-turn just near the airport and went up to Sonoma. So as Rabbi Stephanie mentioned, we have been working very closely with the Federation, with Shomrei Torah, and with Jewish Family and Children's Services. And the biggest challenge in these disasters, and again, I'm talking about from man-made disasters to natural disasters, the biggest challenge is always coordination and communication. And I'm very proud to say that with the leadership from the Federation and also JFCS, it has been very, very efficient. It's messy, it's chaotic, but it has been very, very efficient in the sense that very early in the response, we were able to set up this hub and the camp for the children, which, as we heard from Rabbi Kramer, has now become a hub not just for the Jewish community, but to all the local community that has been affected. So I think setting up this infrastructure, temporary infrastructure as the camp and as the hub was really critical in the success in this response. It was really a center that everyone could have gone to for information, for services, for coordination, etc. So that has been a very crucial success point so far. Now, when we're talking about the long-term needs, and also this is what we at IsraAID are planning to focus our support on, we're talking about different groups that we identify as the most vulnerable. The first one is obviously the people from the Jewish community and from the non-Jewish community who lost their loved ones and lost their houses. These people, apart from the financial support and the legal support, they will definitely need a lot of emotional support. And that will take time. And sometimes, and in our experience from different natural disasters around the world, the symptoms, the post-traumatic symptoms, can come at a very later stage. So our goal right now as professionals is to do whatever we can to prevent and to provide as much as emotional support we can for these people, so prevent future mental health issues. The second group is obviously the first responders. Again, Jewish and non-Jewish, and specifically, obviously, the firefighters. We're talking about a community of more than 10,000 firefighters who would need long-term emotional support. They've worked so hard. The burnout rate among first responders in this kind of situation is very high. So we really have to put a lot of efforts and resources there. The third group is the service providers, such as my friend Rabbi Stephanie. I'll share with you soon a very inspiring story of the support that we've been trying to provide to rabbis and other service providers who are doing the incredible work and who were not only affected themselves, but also have to take care of their whole community that has been devastated by this disaster. And then the fourth group that we identify, and I'm very happy to see that we've started to see them joining the camp, is people from the undocumented workers. People from the undocumented workers who have lost their jobs. Many of them lost their houses. Some of them lost their loved ones. And obviously, because of legal and financial reasons, they're suffering a lot. So we really, I believe in IsraAID, and I think as a whole, the Jewish community should be also putting a lot of efforts and resources there. So just before I conclude, I would like to share with you an inspiring story, because I always say that these terrible disasters are also incredible opportunities to build bridges between people. And for us, one of the most inspiring stories from the last week was that the person who actually led our psychosocial response team and was working very closely with Rabbi Stephanie and Rabbi George in the last week and a half, and he's now, right now, as we speak, still in Shomrei Torah, is a psychotherapist named Nivin, who is an Israeli Arab, teaching in Berkeley, and has been working with us many years, supporting Syrian refugees all over the world. And right after the disaster, I gave her a call, and she immediately left everything she had, and she came to Shomrei Torah to provide support for the Jewish community as part of IsraAID team. So just a small, inspiring story to share with you how, again, these terrible tragedies could also be opportunities for building bridges and for small miracles, such as the miracles we heard that happened in Camp Newman. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yotam. Nancy, I would love to turn it next to you. Thank you. Oh, we're just trying to unmute Nancy.
Hi.
Oh, there we go.
So thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to speak with the group about what JFCS is doing and seeing. You know, as an organization, we're used to dealing with life crises on an individual basis, but now we have a county-wide crisis, really a region-wide crisis. And so we are mobilizing and have mobilized to provide the help on the ground to those in need. We're identifying, raising resources to be there to help the disaster victims to address their needs in this short response phase, but also the very long recovery phase that's going to last months and years. And the needs will change significantly as we move from the response phase to the recovery phase. People are now working on what they call repopulation, moving back into their homes. Many of the neighborhoods are being opened up, and there's an initial trauma for people as they return to their homes, seeing whether their home is there, it's not there, what the state is. They need a lot of support in that process. As schools are opening back up and communities are coming together, we see both an individual trauma, but also a collective community trauma. And so obviously those that are going to need the most long-term support are those that have lost their homes, lost their jobs, or for some people, lost both. And finding housing for people is going to be a huge challenge, as I think most of you know. I mean, the vacancy rates in our communities are so low, close to 1% in Sonoma County. And so being able to have ongoing housing for people is going to be a major challenge. We really also want to make sure that people have all the information that they need, what's available through their insurance, what's available through FEMA, special disaster unemployment or benefit programs that are available. And some people are really able to get all that information. Other people are very traumatized right now and are having a challenge with that. So we are really focusing on our operations on the ground. As you can imagine, some of our Sonoma staff have been impacted by this, but we got our office opened as quickly as we could, and we are actually expanding our office hours, opening evenings, having weekend coverage. We're bringing staff up from our other regions to the Sonoma County. We're already recruiting to hire additional staff. We are starting to really see what the ongoing need is going to be, and I do believe it's going to change over time. But we're opening many, many cases now of people that are turning to us for help. And just an example, our very first case, the very morning of the fire, was one of our own staff, a home care worker, who lost everything, home, everything in the fire, but was calling us because she wanted to come to work to take care of the senior that she's caring for, that she was quite worried about and wanted to make sure that they had the care they need. So we are really mobilizing to provide that help. We've been dealing with people that have had severe burns in the fire and the support they need, people that are dealing with respiratory problems from the fires and other health concerns. A lot of people that are really concerned about their children. We're just fielding a lot of calls in our office and starting to open these cases. And we're also getting referrals through the county, particularly of vulnerable seniors that are really challenged in this disaster. We're opening our doors to everybody. We're definitely doing extensive outreach to the Jewish community, but we are available to help anyone in the community in need, that so everyone can come to us. We have a staff of case managers and clinicians that have training in dealing with trauma and crisis. And so we've really created a whole agency-wide structure to be able to deploy them up to Sonoma County. Our director up there, Sonoma Klein, Diana Klein, that some of you know, couldn't be on this call because she's really been out in the community providing the direct services that are needing. Right now, she's at Beth Ami in their preschool, working with the teachers. We've been working with the teachers and the families there. She's been at Shomrei Torah. She's going tonight to the Chabad to speak. We're really making sure that we're reaching out to the rabbis up there to let them know what support we can provide. Information is really key. So for example, we have a workshop already that we've set up in co-sponsorship with United policyholders on Wednesday, October 25th from 6 to 8 p.m., 427 Mendocino Avenue in Santa Rosa. That's a workshop for everyone in the community that can come so they can better understand how insurance works in a disaster, what's covered, what's not covered, how does FEMA work. There's a lot of need for information. For all of our clients, we are looking at each case individually. What are the range of services that they need, short-term and long-term? We'll develop a plan to help them right now and going forward in the future. So that's counseling, crisis intervention, financial assistance, advocacy, practical support. We've had also an outpouring of people wanting to help. We're training additional volunteers to be able to provide rides to people that need them because they lost their cars or because of the air quality issues. We've gotten donations for financial assistance, gift cards, but also we'll be needing to help people who are renters who don't have insurance to get into housing. People lost jobs to help them financially in that way. We've even set up computers at our office for people who lost their computer in the fire and need to get online. We have new mattresses available for people whose mattresses are smoke damaged or who've lost their bedding. So there's all kinds of immediate short-term needs, but there will be many, many long-term needs. And There is concern about compassion fatigue. People step up initially to volunteer and to help and to donate, but over time that can wane. So we as an organization want to make sure we have all the resources in place to be in it for the long haul. We're coordinating with all of the other volunteer agencies that are up there. There's a group called VOAD, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, that we're involved with to make sure that we know what everyone else is doing and we can not duplicate, but coordinate, collaborate, and work well together. We're helping, as I said, all that come to us, providing opportunities for volunteers. We've had our offices in Sonoma County for decades. We're there for the long haul. And as the needs in the community change, we anticipate changing our services to meet those needs.
Thank you. Nancy, thank you so much. I know it was a lot of detailed information, and I just want to mention for those who've dialed in through the web, the Zoom platform, there's a slide up now that lists several of these resources, including the JFCS website, and we will continue to update the Federation's site with wildfire resources, including the detailed information about the insurance workshop on Wednesday evening. So moving forward to our final speaker, who will provide a very different perspective, I am sure, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Angel. I think we pulled you literally off the front lines to join us and speak to this group. So thank you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. And I'm surprised I made it this long. I prepared a statement, and I really hope that I don't get emotional as I read it. Thank you guys very much for entertaining my words today. Sonoma County is undergoing the worst crisis in recent memory, perhaps in the county's history. This series of fires, now known as the Northern California firestorms, hit several counties hard and has destroyed at least 5,100 structures. That number has grown. Damage estimates are totaling in the billions. Search and rescue operations confirm everyone's worst fears as they slowly make their way across the devastated neighborhoods. I will never forget the early morning hours of Monday, October 9th. I was awoken by a frantic phone message from one of my soldiers reporting that he had fled from a fire, losing his house and his family barely escaping. I contacted associates at the County Emergency Operations Center and our National Guard headquarters, and to be frank, both entities did not understand the gravity of the fire, nor the rapidly expanding crisis. This was moving faster than agencies could manage. My family was then awoken by knocks on the door and the periodic boom of explosions. When I went outside, ashes were raining down and the sky to the northeast of my housing community was glowing a dull red color. We were able to load up our children, dog, and some clothes and flee into crowded streets without power. Everyone in my neighborhood got out, and our homes are still standing. But we were forced to evacuate for 8 days as the fire, fueled by hurricane-like winds, remained active and continued to spread. I had to separate from my family within the hour to report to duty at my engineer battalion headquarters, trusting that they would make it safely to my sister's house in the neighboring county. Despite this, we are amongst the lucky families. I have never in my 23-year career in the military seen a disaster of this magnitude. We are the headquarters of a joint task force of Army and Air National Guard personnel that has grown to almost 1,000 soldiers, some of them from out of state. We have mission command of all the National Guard personnel supporting Sonoma County and are heavily engaged with our civilian emergency management and first response agencies. We are executing missions around the clock. As I type this, I've seen teams conducting search and rescue missions in devastated ruins, groups of soldiers assisting at evacuation centers, manning traffic control points, providing transportation services, and performing all manner of logistical operations as they are identified. My concerns at this point extend beyond the crisis management phase of operations. At this point, first response agencies are getting the logistical support that they need. Mutual aid between counties is well defined and applied effectively. We are assisting with the repopulation of the devastated communities, but that in itself is a misleading term. We are not repopulating. We are facilitating closure. The destruction throughout these neighborhoods is on such an epic proportion, we are slowly beginning to accept that we may never be the same. This will take years to rebuild, and there are no near-term solutions. Many of our displaced families still haven't found permanent lodging. Mortgages and property taxes are still due. Not everyone has great insurance. My daughter's tears are shed, fearing that her friends that lost their homes will move away, and that her school will never again be the same. That friendly faces will be replaced with a surge of new exhausted children with an overworked staff supporting them. We need to work to stay together and ensure that our friends and families remain intact. That's all that I have. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. Forgive the brief words.
Thank you. You give us all pause to just process and feel your genuine emotion, and your words are just tremendously meaningful. I do want to ask that if anyone has questions, you can feel free to email to Nora, Noras, at sfjcf.org, or to submit them through the Zoom platform. In the meantime, I will pose the first question. You know, within our Jewish community, there's concern and obligation to help and support our own, and at the same time, there's a social justice principle and Jewish principle that drives us to support those around us as well. Rabbi Stephanie, I'm wondering if you could start by commenting on, knowing that your own immediate community has faced devastation and loss within your congregation. How do you see navigating and navigating that balance and walking in both worlds of supporting your Jewish community members as well as those around you?
Thank you so much for asking. So our community suffered a great loss. One of our past presidents of the congregation wasn't able to make it out of her home successfully and died in the fire. We also have 29 other families who lost their homes and everything in the fire, and their stories of escape are also very, very hard. So we immediately started with shelter. We continued with the Federation providing a meal of comfort on Friday night. We also had a meal of comfort after the Shiva Minyan for the Marnie, Schwartz, our past president, who died in the fire on Wednesday. And we're going to continue to really, with the help of IsraAID and professionals in the area, to provide these grief counseling, community and conversation meals throughout the weeks and months ahead to really help people through this hard process and the long recovery. Additionally, the Women's Fund at the Federation help us put together Judaica boxes for all of those 29 families who lost their homes, filled with menorahs and mezuzot and challah plates and covers and all of the essentials that a Jewish home needs. And so that's what we're planning to do for the Jewish community. For the broader community, we're really, really worried about and working closely with some public schools to help get therapists in there when they reopen next week to help the families. One of our schools has 105 kids who have all lost their homes. And it's how do those kids deal with it, and how do the kids in their classroom deal with their friends who have lost everything. So really it's the emotional support and the money and the finances that it's going to take to help rebuild. And we also need to be here for our congregants and the broader community who have lost their jobs.
Thank you. If we could move, similar question to Yotam and then to Nancy. There are many people in our community who are really concerned with the marginalized, most vulnerable in the region. I know you both touched on it in your opening remarks, but if you wanted to go a little deeper around, both how we're holding our own in the Jewish community and also supporting those who are marginalized.
Sure, I'll start and Nancy could take it from there. First of all, for us at IsraAID, this specific disaster has been one of the few times that we actually started and focused a lot of our efforts within the Jewish community because it was affected so badly. But I think, again, as we move forward and when we, again, look at the most vulnerable, we find out that it's working closely together with the Jewish community, in that case with our partners from Shomrei Torah, other congregations, the Federation, JFCS, to support other communities in need is extremely important, and it's what we call the double impact, because we all know, I mean, and you don't have to be a psychologist to know that when you help other people, you also help yourself. And it's a very empowering experience. Of course, we have to take care of the most vulnerable people in the Jewish community, and that should remain a priority for the long term. But I do believe, and again, we're very inspired to see Rabbi Kramer and Rabbi George taking the lead, and already, even within the immediate emergency phase, already lending a hand to the non-Jewish community. I think helping the most vulnerable would help both the people who really need the support and the Jewish community in the long term. So this is what IsraAID is all about, and I also really agree that the emotional support and training people who could provide more emotional support for this vulnerable community is a key step forward.
Thank you. Nancy?
Hi, it's Nancy. Can you hear me?
Oh, good. Thank you. Now we got you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you know, we certainly see ourselves having a responsibility to be there for the whole community. We definitely want to be sure that the needs of the community, Jewish community, is met. And, you know, there is an underserved population within the Jewish community. There are low-income Jewish people in the community that are renters, that don't have resources, that will need extensive help. People with disabilities, people that are aging. But we are also, as a nonprofit in Sonoma County, very connected in with the network of nonprofits that are up there, Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, etc. And through our relationships with those organizations, through the VOAD group, we are working together to share resources to make sure that people are reached. There is real concern about undocumented individuals in Sonoma County and how they're going to get help and access services. They are not eligible for FEMA help. They're not eligible for Red Cross gift cards. There's some of the public benefits they're not eligible for. So there is a lot of work at the county level and people kind of coming together to look at how that group is going to be supported. But I think, you know, it's really going to be bringing organizations together and working together to really identify those in greatest need and make sure we mobilize resources across agencies to be able to serve them.
Thank you. I think the final question that I'll pose really to any of you who would like to respond is, you know, given the enormous impact which you have all so eloquently described, how can members of our community get involved?
Do you want me to,
Stephanie? Oh, Nancy, is that Nancy? Okay. Sure, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be a need for tremendous help. There, you know, there is a need for financial support for the organizations that are on the ground doing this work, and it will take significant resources to do that. There's also a need for volunteers. Right now, I do want to say there's not a need for stuff yet. In fact, the community, you know, with the generosity of people, there's almost too much donated goods. So we really have to sort of figure out now what the next steps are going to be for what kinds of material donations are needed. And then we have to get the word out so that in the right time, people can make those donations of goods, and volunteer help will be critical. We now are creating a list of people that are contacting us interested in volunteering. There's more people right now wanting to volunteer across the whole community, but as we're getting organized and figuring out as the needs change, to be able to quickly mobilize volunteers to come in and help is really, really important. So I think just identifying people who can be resources, and if those people can then be mobilized when the time is right, that will really help.
Thank you.
This is Colonel. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. This is Colonel Chris Engel. I've got to get back on the clock, but I have a quick suggestion.
Please.
Hidden Valley Elementary School lost its satellite campus, which hosted, I want to say, 4 or 5 classrooms from kindergarten through the 2nd grade. And I believe the intent of the school district is to surge those back onto the main campus. I don't know if they are resourced for that, if they need temporary structure or whatever they need to do on the campus to make it acceptable. But I would love it as a parent of students in that facility if any help could be applied towards that particular school.
Thank you. We will look into that. And good luck to you as you get back into the field. Rabbi Stephanie or Yotam, any concluding comments that you'd like to make? Sure, Yotam.
Yeah. So no, I agree. I agree with Stephanie. Sorry, with Nancy. I think the long-term commitment is the key, and the long-term commitment both on the financial support level and, of course, also on the volunteer level. It's again very typical, and it's very amazing to see the outpouring of support right now. But in a month from now, in 2 months from now, and even in a year from now, the needs for volunteers, especially professional volunteers with experience in psychotherapy, I think could be extremely, extremely valuable and useful in the long run. And absolutely financial support will be needed in the long term. So I think we have all to be very strategic about not using all the resources right now and understand that we're here for the long term. And I think it's very important to communicate it to all the wonderful supporters.
Thank you. And Rabbi Stephanie?
I was going to say exactly what Yotam said. He said it perfectly.
Terrific. So again, for those of you who connected through the web, we have some resources posted. For those of you who are called in, just one other organization I want to call out, which is making some really tremendous assistance available, actually particularly for the Jewish community, is Hebrew Free Loan of San Francisco, that has a whole series of loan programs available to help people with short and long-term needs related to housing and personal other financial expense. So I encourage you to spread that word to any of you, throughout the community, to people who might be able to benefit from that. So to conclude, I'd like to turn it back to Danny Grossman, CEO of the Jewish Community Federation.
So let me just thank the speakers again for taking time off the front lines, whatever those lines look like, and all the service you're providing and the grace and the dedication with which you're doing it. I also want to thank those who dialed in. We have dozens and dozens of people to dial into this call who I know are deeply concerned and want to be active. And as Roxanne said, you can find the resources on this slide. Absent that, you can find them on our website, jewishfed.org, and therefore also for continued updates. We had the privilege, in working up there last Friday, had the privilege of spending Erev Shabbat in Shomrei Torah with the community and the 250 people who showed up. And at the time, the rabbis talked about the Hashkivenu prayer and how we prayed for a Sukkot Shalom to be spread over us. The four of you on this call, the others that we mentioned, the people around the table, including and especially Roxanne to my right and others with the Federation, have really been providing that Sukkot Shalom. And we hear the four speakers loud and clear that we have to sustain and maintain that for the long term. So again, I want to thank my colleague Jim Brandt for everything he and his team are doing, and conclude by sending thoughts of care and concern to everyone impacted by this crisis, and our warmest wishes for Shabbat Shalom. We'll be sharing this recording by email and online for anybody who is interested. So again, thank you and Shabbat Shalom.